Serving their community is who they are because they love where they live. REMAX 3D Real Estate is proud to bring you Heart of Greenville, a video series dedicated to celebrating all the wonderfully great things about Greenville, Texas. On every episode, Tanisha Denny will share Greenville's story through the stories of people who call Greenville home. This is Heart of Greenville.
Thank you so much for watching Heart of Greenville, where we get to hear the stories of the wonderfully great people of our community. I asked Kevin Sawatsky to come onto our show because he's an agent in our office that serves with his full, complete heart. Here's my conversation with Kevin Sawatsky. Hey y'all, I'm Tanisha Denny, your host of Heart of Greenville, and today we are in this beautiful home of Kevin and Renee Sawatsky. And Kevin is our guest today. Hey Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me along.
You are so welcome for coming along. In fact, thank you for opening up your home. I want to give a good shout out because I know Renee wanted to make sure everything was spotless and in its order. And I would say, Kevin, you get an A+.
Awesome. I can always use husband points.
Yes, always. Well, I know that you've let us come along this journey with you of building your new home, and you and Renee sat down and did your plans together, and it's been a lot of fun to watch it come to life. Mm-hmm. When people talk about your home, I tell them, the Sawatsky home is the smartest home in Hunt County. I love all your smart features.
Yeah, we do too. We say Alexa a lot. Oh, there she goes.
Uh-oh. Oh, and hopefully we silenced all that too. There's no telling. As you were giving us the tour today, like everything was Alexa and things would happen, and it's super cool. So I love seeing your excitement about that and keeping up with all the technology. So you're making us all come along and be better at that too.
Well, it's fun to be able to think about how something might work and then figure out a way to do it and then see that it actually does work.
That's true. And I want to put this out here too. You guys had built what is now an Airbnb where you lived while you were building the home. So how is that Airbnb working out for you?
It's actually working really well. It's a lot of fun to meet new people. Sometimes people come in for a weekend. Sometimes they're here for a number of weeks. We've had someone who's waiting for a house to be finished and kind of waiting and waiting and waiting. But we get to meet them, and it's just a lot of fun.
That's really cool. Well, and we need more places like that with the housing market the way that it is, and people need to sell their home, but they also need to get into a home. And so we have that a lot where there's a transition where someone needs somewhere to go for a week or two or sometimes a month. So it's great to have that resource here.
Yeah. And it kind of feels a little bit like kind of my hotel background. So it's like my little tiny hotel.
Yeah. And you know how to manage that.
That's right.
Well, everyone, in case you don't know, Kevin Sawatsky is a real estate agent in our office. And I'm going to give you a little background and talk about how Kevin and I met. We actually met in 2018 at the Home and Garden Show here in Greenville at the Fletcher Horn Civic Center. And I will never forget, you walked up and you had on your real estate shirt. You're always good about branding. And just like you are today, sporting the REMAX, but you were sporting your previous brokerage. And you walked up to me and you didn't know who I was until I actually said my name. Right. And when you saw and heard who I was, you looked at me and said, I don't know you, but I know your listings.
I could always tell. I walk into a house and it was a Denisha house, even if I hadn't paid attention.
Well, that made an impression on me. I'm like, okay, this guy pays attention to details. He knows all my tricks now. So he's not with me. He needs to be at our brokerage. He now knows all of our tricks for how we help get our sellers' homes sold faster. But from that day, we had a great conversation and followed up with several lunches and lots
and lots of lunches.
We did have lots of lunches. Bottle Cap was our place. So one of the things that I thought was really cool that you continued to say is that you loved your broker. And I think that is so important that agents love their broker. They should love their broker. But the things you were doing inside Greenville, your brokerage was in another city, and you were doing so many things in Greenville. And it really fit into our core beliefs in serving others and giving back to our community. And so I remember us talking through that and saying, okay, Kevin, you're doing all these things, but come join us and let's do it collectively together. And we've gotten to be able to do those things together. So that was a great transition. But your son Austin just got married, but we have to give Austin kudos here because we would not be sitting here today if I had not ran into Austin at Cheddar's in Allen, Texas, and he was a waiter.
Yep.
And I looked into his eyes and saw his smile, and I'm like, he looks just like Kevin Sawatsky, and I have to ask him if he's related to you. Now, who does that? You're sitting in a restaurant in Cheddar's in Allen, and who knew? Who knew? And so it was really cool that that opened that door, and I feel like I gave birth to this, to you coming along, because you finally came along at the end of 2018.
We did, yeah. It's hard to believe it's been 2 years.
It has.
Man, it's gone by fast.
It has.
It's been gone by very quickly.
Well, I think one of the best things that I've enjoyed doing with you too is when we did the tax protest seminar and working with Brent South and, bringing that along and helping the consumer know how to protest their tax values and giving them such a wealth of knowledge. And so, and for people that don't know, you do so much training and development in our office and help bringing our team along. So I'm just going to take a minute and tell you thank you for that while we're on the topic.
You're welcome. Love doing it. I love teaching. That was my degree. And I didn't get to do it for very long formally, but I've done it ever since informally.
You do have a heart for that. So speaking of that, let's talk. This is what we're here to talk about. On Heart of Greenville, we really like to get to know people's story. And we like to know, where did they grow up? How did they get to where they are today? So Kevin, tell us, where did you grow up and how did you get to Greenville, Texas and into real estate?
That's a very, very long story. I grew up overseas. My parents were missionaries in Southeast Asia, and so I grew up in Singapore and Malaysia. And I was originally from Canada. I was born in Calgary, and we moved overseas when I was very young, and we came back a couple of times, but until high school, I was overseas. So freshman year of high school, I was very much the fish out of water, trying to make that transition, and really had a good high school experience and got to do lots of stuff, but it was a big change to come back from overseas. I loved growing up as a missionary kid. We got to travel, we got to do sports, we got to meet people. We went to an international school, so people from all over the globe. That just was sort of our experience, and kind of wish my kids had maybe more of that, but we just haven't been in that environment. But
where was your favorite place?
Probably Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where we lived. I love the fruit, the food, the climate, everything about it. I see missionary kids who have a wide range of experiences, and we were fortunate to have parents who really wanted us to enjoy the culture. And even though we didn't learn the language, those pieces we didn't have, I would love to take my family and go back in a heartbeat, and just never been able to do that.
Oh, well, that would be fun to take them on that same journey to the different countries and cities that you went to.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Oh, I got to do it with my dad one year. When I was teaching, I had a couple of weeks that he and I went back, and we spent a couple of weeks just sort of exploring all the houses we'd lived in and the churches that they'd served in and meeting people, and it was within 15 or 20 years of being there, so a lot of the same people we got to meet. And of course, I was a little kid and, an adult and married at that point, and it was just really neat getting a chance to do that exploring.
Were you ever scared as a missionary kid? I mean, were there ever times that people didn't want you to be there as a missionary? No,
we lived in the capital city, and it was every bit as modern as any city we've lived in here. And so we lived in a neighborhood, and my parents both spoke Mandarin, so they had kind of an automatic in with a lot of people. No, in fact, I came back here for 9th grade, so 7th and 8th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, when visitors would come visit us, my dad would send me out on the little local buses to take them around to the museums and the tin mine and all of those things. So as this 6th grader, 7th grader, I'm out here, which bus we get on and all of that stuff. And it really was just a very, very cool way to grow up.
That is really cool. That's where those leadership skills came in.
Well,
you started at 6th and 7th grade.
Yeah. So, so different. I was originally from Calgary. I was adopted. I think you know that.
I do, but I bet our audience doesn't know that. And I think that's such a cool story.
So I was adopted as a 1-year-old. And my parents came back from overseas. They came back from a term in Singapore and filed papers to adopt. What they wanted was an infant boy and an infant girl. And at that point, missionary salary, the fact that they were going back overseas again in a year, all of those things should have made it absolutely impossible to do this. But I was adopted in May, and my sister was adopted in September, and we moved to Chicago for some further education my dad wanted to do, and then in 1967 we were back overseas, and it was just one, God does this. He moves things around and puts people where he wants them, and I think I was born in Calgary, but my birth family, who I've had the opportunity to meet, was from Kimberley, British Columbia, little tiny town up in the Rockies, a mining town. And I look at from Kimberley, British Columbia to Calgary to Singapore and Malaysia to Minneapolis and then finally Texas. That's just a path that you can't make that story up.
No.
So
That's an awesome story.
yeah.
So how did you feel about being adopted?
We always knew we were adopted. It was our favorite bedtime story. We would ask, Mom, Dad, tell us how you got us. And of course, they had it kind of easy because they could just say, we called up and said we want a little boy and a little girl. And they called us and said, we got a little boy available. And then we got a little girl available. So the story was a little easier for them. But we always knew it. But we always knew that our parents dreamed and planned. And this was a huge part of their life. And we always were shown God's hand in it. And so it was just kind of a natural thing. And, I've met hundreds of adoptees, and, I think most of them who get to know from day one that they were adopted but wanted desperately, it fits very well. Some who find out later, there's some, there are obviously challenges when you mix families, but it was awesome.
That has to be really cool to know you were wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are put up for adoption, it's not always because you weren't wanted.
Right.
It's always a different circumstance.
Yeah.
For
In fact,
everyone.
that's what we discovered in the story, that we very much would have been. My birth mother made a decision that she couldn't raise me, and actually didn't share with her family that she was pregnant, and so they learned a long time later that she had a baby. But we've had connections with that, and we are connected on Facebook, and we talk to them occasionally on holidays, and so even though it's different, it's pretty neat seeing.
It is. And really, I do think knowing that if you're not equipped to have that child, that's the greatest form of love, is to be able to give that life to someone who can't have children.
Yep.
And just like your parent, the ones you call your parents that took you in,
Yep.
they loved you unconditionally as their own, and that's something that's really special. So
Well, and we've got a whole nother generation now. My sister, I have just one sister, she and her husband got married several years ago and adopted an infant who's about to turn 6 next month after next. And so for 6 years, we've had another adoptee in the family who we just love desperately, and that's our niece.
that's awesome. She's adorable too. I got to see her at Austin's wedding whenever.
And she
we had
dances
her.
next door to our office, so
Yes, so we get to see her pop in from time to time.
Yep.
So tell us, where did you go to college?
I wanted to go to the University of Minnesota. In fact, I was all signed up, and my good friends were all going there. And then literally last minute, within a week of school starting, again, God brought a bunch of things together that had me in just on the north side of Chicago at Trinity, what's now Trinity International University. It was Trinity College back then. And I made a decision to switch it all. So I went home, grabbed my stuff, and we moved back, and I was on the 5-year plan in college. I spent 5 years in college, and of course that's where I got to meet Renee and all of that stuff. So it was pivotal. Again, God moves location. I think location is so important in our lives. We don't oftentimes think about that, especially people who haven't really moved a lot. But I talk to people in military and missions and business. A lot of my friends in Malaysia were their parents were in the oil business.
Okay.
And so they moved all the time. And so but this whole process of watching God move around a globe gives you a perspective of him that's you get to see when you're in the middle of that.
That's really cool. And it probably shows you too, God can love all of us
He
all
does.
over the world.
He does. He's not limited. He's not limited at all. And he has a plan. And if, even though sometimes I saw a great Facebook meme, if you think you ruin God's plans, give it up. You're not that powerful, I think is what it said. But, he'll move to where he wants you to accomplish what you need to accomplish and what he has planned for you. So
That's really cool. And I think it's awesome that you keep your eyes open for that. And that's something that, not everyone has had that opportunity. But, being able to keep your heart and your eyes open to what he has for you.
Yep.
So tell us, how did you meet Renee? You were in college, but there's got to be a fun story here.
She was a cheerleader, and I was a photographer. So, you sit at the right place in the stands for a soccer game. And then we both enjoy music, and so we got to participate in concert choir. And so, of course, that's very formal tux and formal dress, and so it was kind of fun doing that. And she was the pianist. She's always played piano, and she's so good at it.
She's so talented.
Yep. And so, kind of through those connections and tour, and then we also sang together on a small, we called them gospel teams, but really it was a PR team for the college. We got sent to camps and churches and so on, and we were together on that. She was the pianist, and I helped lead that team, and so we did that for a couple of years. And so kind of through all that process, all of a sudden, you start thinking, that's the one.
She's the one.
It took her just a few weeks longer to figure that out.
Oh, really?
That's a whole nother story we won't go into today, but she figured it out,
Sounds like a good one, though.
and we just had our 32nd anniversary, so it was a good start.
Anniversary.
Thank
That
you.
is awesome. And tell us how many kiddos you guys have.
We have 4. Ben is just turned 27 this year. He owns a home here in Greenville, and which is kind of a very cool thing for us to see him take that big, gigantic step. He has always been a musician. He sings with us on worship team at our church, and Renee and I are both on that too, so it's kind of fun looking across stage and getting a chance to see him there. Michaela is 25, and she is she works for an importer and works through the process of orders, has a number of states that she works with, and is out in California at her boyfriend's parents, kind of enjoying this pandemic COVID time out there. And but she's kind of our family organizer. She's the one who makes sure everyone does the events and so on. Then Kinsley, just this month, turned 24. She is our adventurer. She's, as you know, she's currently on a major hike. She's almost to the Canadian border after leaving the Mexican border back in the spring. And she's hiked all the way and carried her gear and carried her food and stuck to it and done a 24-hour, 51-mile day in the middle of all of that, climbed Mount Whitney in the middle of that. That's the tallest peak in the lower 48. And so she's working on a master's in literature, and so trying to figure out what that all ends up being. And then our youngest, Austin, you said he got married, and that was August 2nd, and his wife, Destiny, the two of them live in Dallas. And we have kind of this has been a tough year for a lot of people, but for Austin and Destiny, other than the weirdness of graduating college sort of virtually, accidentally, but they graduated, got married, first job, first apartment, and all of those things. And so tonight we're actually going to go celebrate his 22nd birthday, because his birthday was just a few days ago on the 18th.
How fun.
So,
you guys have raised 4 incredible kiddos.
They're amazing.
And it's because of your faith and yours and Renee's dedication to one another and to your family. One of the things I don't think people know is, what did you do prior to real estate? So why don't you share with our audience what you did before you became a realtor?
Okay. My degree was English secondary ed, so I taught high school for 3 years and loved it, but it wasn't something that was going to allow us to be a single income at that point. And so when we started thinking about kids, we had to make a decision. I had worked at a Marriott hotel in college. And so I went back to a management position with Marriott and worked there for a number of years, then worked for a number of small management companies, and eventually headed up a management company. Arrowhead Hospitality Group was our management company. We did, our last year we merged, but our last year before merger we did a little over $100 million in sales with 9 hotels, and that was a whole experience for someone who was young and making it up as he went along a lot of times. But we had an awesome team, and I loved the industry. I love, it's tons of stuff to do in one building. I always used to say I love hotels because you can do 100 different jobs without ever going to a different building.
That's true.
So, it's kind of, people who come to hotels are there to celebrate, to do business, to enjoy, to get away. So it's all the good things. And so you get to be a part of that, and making it even better was something I loved about the industry. Then for the last 10 years of my career, I worked on business development. management contracts and hotel development and a number of things for a number of national companies. And so it was 28 years of hotels before I ever got to this, and loved it. Traveled a lot those last years. That was tough, especially with the ages of our families and our family. And but it was a great industry and really a lot of fun. I still get all the electronic versions of all the industry magazines, and I look through and go, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. We should have done that.
I can so see you in the hotel industry, and you just walking in and telling everyone good morning, and no one could have left that hotel that day and not had a smile on their face.
One of my personal goals is to be the happiest person, actually the most cheerful person that you've run into today. And there are a lot of days that I don't accomplish that, but fortunately every day is a new day, so
That's right.
I get to start it all over again.
Exactly.
But I used to love doing exactly that. I'd walk into the hotel at 6:30 in the morning and walk through the restaurant and bust some dishes and seat some people, and then go to the lobby and check in with people at the front desk, and then have a housekeeping team meeting, and then go down and see what my maintenance guys were working on, what room they were recreating, and just that whole process of just being a part of that. And had some just awesome people, some great partners that I worked with in our management company, and just really had the opportunity to kind of develop a team, and we didn't know how to do that, and we kind of had to figure it out, but we did, and ended up merging with a national company that is still in existence today, and it was the thing to do at the time. There are a lot of times I kind of think, but you know what, I'm here, and
That's right.
I wouldn't trade it for a million.
Well, speaking of that, how did you transition to real estate then, from the hospitality industry to the real estate industry?
Continues to be a long story. I went to work for a ministry called Church Ministries International, which is in Plano, works with churches in Latin America, primarily in Ecuador, and I was on the donor and the development side, and loved it. But worked part-time at a restaurant in Rockwall, which was just a blast. I was 52 years old, and everyone else was about 11, so I was this old guy in the middle of all these servers, but I had an opportunity to kind of be a peer, but with a because of age, you get some respect from that, and really just great people. But I had all these regular guests, and tons of realtors would come in, and I finally there were several who kept saying, "You got to get your license, got to get your license." And finally, one of them said, "You just have to." She taught at Champions, and so I did my my school there, and it was kind of going to be to replace maybe the restaurant, but I loved it. And so I'm not as my wife will tell you, I'm a really bad multitasker. If I have more than one thing to do at once, it doesn't work very well. So I ended up doing this, and here it is for almost 5 years later, and I love it.
That's awesome. Oh, you can tell that you love it. I mean, you walk in the office every day and you're smiling and happy, and it just kind of, your hospitality just carries right over. And your customer service, that one of the things that really stands out to me for you is your level of customer service when you're working with someone. And I know that stems, one, from your heart, but from your hospitality industry, just making sure whoever you work with, no matter what, they have the best possible customer experience that you can give them. And I think that serves you well in this industry. People need us to be holding their hands and guiding them through, and we're like counselors a lot of times, helping people through that. So that has worked well, and it's been a great transition.
Yep.
So let's talk about this. We're in the real estate industry now. You're at REMAX 3D Real Estate and been with us for 2 years now. One of the things that we like to talk about on Heart of Greenville is what we love about Greenville. And we have our Love Where You Live campaign, and we've been all about supporting our local community. So in the words of Kevin Sawatsky, what do you love about Greenville?
So we moved here in 2005 from Minnesota. I was working for a hotel company at that point, traveling, but working from home. We were homeschooling, so we really didn't have ties to that particular location, and we used to come to Texas and enjoy spring break with my wife's brother and his family. And Renee and I woke up one morning, it was April 4th, 2005, and said, we could actually just live here. Weird thought. We moved to Minneapolis in '79 when we came back from overseas. Other than the time in college, we just always lived in Minneapolis. And so from April 4th of 2005 to July 25th of 2005. We sold our house there, flew down, looked at some houses, put in an offer, bought a house here, packed up our stuff, and we closed on our house in Cattle Mills. I didn't know what a Cattle Mills was. I just knew it was within 45 minutes of Allen, Texas, which was our requirement, because that's where Renee's brother Andrew lived. And it was some space in the country. And we had always wanted to do that. My daughters really would have loved to, in Minnesota, have horses. And we just couldn't make that happen there. And all of a sudden we thought, we can do that here. And so we bought a place with 20 acres and loved it. And one of those first Sundays, we walked into a church in Greenville and have been there ever since. They took us in and treat us like family, and that's been our experience, that it really is an amazing church family. And I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of people, of course, in church as they either buy or sell or have friends or relatives do that. So I kind of like that part too. But people ask us all the time, how'd you end up in Texas?
Right.
And the only answer I can give is that on April 4th, 2005, God said, you need to start thinking about Texas, because there was no reason to move here. We loved being there. We had great friends. I still go up several times a year. My folks are buried there, and so lots of ties to the Twin Cities. But we just it was like this slip and slide once we got started. You just kind of can, and all of a sudden we were here. And then we woke up on the 26th and went, whoa, what did we just do? So you get to this community. We'd never lived somewhere sort of rural before. We'd always been in a metro area. We'd always had neighbors, sort of this far away. And discovered we loved this. We ended up with amazing neighbors, lifelong friend kind of neighbors at that house, and a cool house and a little house at the back, so we had the opportunity to have people come stay out there and live there for periods of time. And church was a connection, and just being able to go into stores. So the very first time, I sent tons of stuff FedEx. So the very first time I had to send something out, I drive into Cattle Mills, and there used to be a little storefront, and it was a number of businesses, but that was where the FedEx drop-off was. And I walked in, and she said, do you live here? And I said, yeah, we just moved. She said, where do you live? And I gave her the address, and she said, oh, I love your fireplace. And I knew that we had moved somewhere very different. Someone knew my house better than I did. But that's kind of been our experience here. And so as we've gotten to know people, and whether they're business owners or retirees or people from church or just all of these things, people related to horses or related to motorcycles. I ride motorcycles. Oh, yes. And so all those have just been ties. And so this community has allowed us to be a part of a community that doesn't let you just crawl into your hole at home and escape, which is, I think, a lot of people, particularly people who live in the city. It's easy to do. We've got these monster TVs and we've got all of this stuff. It's easy to crawl into a hole and ignore the world. And I don't think you can in this community, at least not as easily. You can force your way out. But I think what we found is people accommodating, and they liked being with us and invited us to dinner and lunch. And so I try to do those same things, especially for new people. We just had lunch this last weekend at my sister's place. They've moved here now, and with a new couple from church. And it's normal to do that. Mm-hmm. And what we discovered is we like that normal. Yes. And that's just not what you see everywhere. But we still can be at DFW in an hour and 15 minutes from here. We can be in downtown Dallas. Every time you go by a used car, you drive about 1,000 miles all over the Metroplex looking for one. But it just became home. And I think that fit we didn't expect. We expected to find somewhere we liked and probably some nice people and a school. Well, at that point, we were homeschooling, so it wasn't so critical. But we found we loved the Cattle Mills School District, for instance. My wife ended up teaching there for 9 years. So the kids had a great experience there. And we just go to football games, and you'd look around the stands, and you kind of knew people. And it wasn't this distance. And if you didn't know them, somebody was likely to sit down next to you and go, you live here?
Right.
And, I know some people don't like that, but for my personality, it just doesn't get any better than that.
I love what you said. This was home. Mm-hmm. And until you experience home, you don't know what that is.
That's right.
And so I think that's awesome. Mm-hmm. And I think it says a lot about our community that they took you in and helped you make this feel like home for you. So that's
even the person who told me to get my real estate license. I mean, here's someone who, I'm the server in a restaurant. And it's really, to me, I'm not sure how many times I've said, I think you need to become to someone who's a server in a restaurant or waiting on me in line in a store. But that's just been our experience. It's been so interactive. And so anyway.
That's wonderful.
So I told you, long answer, short question.
There we go. We have it. Okay. I have one final question.
Okay.
And it's a pop question. And here it is. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given? And how have you applied it?
I said before, one of my goals is to be the most cheerful person you've run into today. There is something else that I say a lot, and that is make it a great day. And that's from my dad. My dad really didn't understand how you could just have a great day. And so when he'd hear people say that, have a great day, he'd be like, no, you need to make it a great day. So make it a great day. And I've said that, and I think that's probably the advice.
That's the advice.
My dad was my best friend for a very long time. And to hear him say that, I can still see him. He'd be sitting at his desk. He worked from home a lot, and sitting at his desk, and I'd say, okay, I'm out of here. Make it a great day.
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
I can just see that. And I think if we understood how much impact we have in whether it's going to be great or not, we can decide that. Obviously, things happen. We can't control that. We teach, I teach this class on Thursday nights, and one of the things we talk about is a lot of our life we can't control. It still makes us mad and frustrated, which is silly, because if we can't control it, it shouldn't, but it does. But there's so many things that we fight and claw against, but the only things we can control are our attitudes and our actions. So if I can tell myself, this is what you need to do, I can start working on that. And so that's a little bit of that. So what was the second half of your question?
How have you applied it?
Okay, so there you go. And so the other, so here's the third thing. My email signature, people comment on all the time. It always says onward.
Onward.
And that's actually from a person that I met in the hotel industry. He used to always use that, and he was kind of at a distance, a mentor. And he would say, whatever's going on now, this isn't permanent. So where are you going? What's the forward motion? He loved that term, forward motion, and I use it with my clients. I tell my clients, I believe in forward motion. We can't just sit. If you put in an offer, we want to keep moving along. We want to keep going. So forward motion. So that word onward is another one, because we want to look at what's coming up next. One of the things we talk about in class is there's a reason why a rearview mirror in a car is much smaller than the windshield. It's important to know what's behind you. You've got to pay attention to that. But it's a whole lot more important to figure out, kind of what that direction is. So anyway, so there's my advice.
Thank you. Your dad left a legacy with you.
He did.
And now you get to leave that legacy for other people. So I may have to carry that on with you. Now, I say all the time, have a great day. I'm going to have to change that now and say, make it a great day.
Do you want me to hold you accountable for that?
Yes, I would. Are you going to hold me accountable in our coaching sessions now? We're going to...
Never done that before?
No.
Never upwardly delegated things to you?
You are amazing at upwardly delegating.
Tanisha, have you ever thought about...
Yes. And that's what I love about you being in our office, because you keep me on my toes and you keep us moving onward. So, all right, Kevin, let's wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Very enjoyable.
We've talked about my recruiting style, and my style, I pray that God will send us the agents that need to be in our office. And that's always my prayer. And so I'm so thankful that he sent you to us, and I really enjoy working with you, and thankful to have you in my life.
And likewise, it's been a good fit. As you said, I loved where I was before this, and it was incredibly difficult to make a change. But again, it felt like it was something that I was being led to do, and I really did want to focus on the place I live and eat and work and go to church and all of that. And our office has been just such a huge part of that. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, onward.
There we go.
Thank you for watching Heart of Greenville. This video series, which is designed to celebrate Greenville, Texas, is spearheaded by REMAX 3D Real Estate.